Okay, I think 30 was a nice even number to get started on. Welcome everyone and welcome to today's event, brought to you by the IWFM People Development SIG. I'm not going to read out all of the agenda for you, you can see it outlined below, but needless to say, we'll do the AGM bit, the boring bit first, and then we'll get you to the important bit by Beth, which is your CPD for this lunchtime. My name is Helen Kenyon, I am the chair of the IWFM People Development SIG. With me today, I've also got Bill Gabriel, who is our treasurer, who will be talking about the masses of money that we've managed to accumulate over the last 12 months. We've also got Scott, who's one of our committee members. And as I say, most importantly, we've got Beth, who has volunteered to do our training session today. So just a short bit about the People Development SIG. We are a relatively small committee. There are only 5 of us at the current time. You can follow us and find information on the IWFM page by scanning the code in front of you. There's also a QR code to our group on LinkedIn. If you want to scan that, you can click to apply, become part of the group, and we will share updates, snippets of information. You're also welcome to share best practice amongst yourselves. We also have some roles within our committee. As I said, we're quite small, so we are looking for a deputy chair, a secretary, or even some more committee members. We're not biased, we'll take any and all of you. So if anybody's interested in applying, you can see more detail on the IWFM website or link out to any of us and we will give you some information. A little bit about some upcoming events that we've got. So we have some in-person ones coming in this year. We have a big all-day conference in Birmingham, put on jointly with the Midlands region. It will be a full-day leadership conference. We've already got a great lineup of speakers. We have the IWFM chair and former chair that are going to be there. And it's all about sort of developing leadership skills, which is one of the skill shortages we have in FM at the moment. We will also be bringing to you later in London an October event on career pathways, including some information on the journeys and routes that people have taken. So that's one to keep an eye out for. The date will be confirmed shortly. And also some more practical skills. So some more webinars coming through. So one around AI that hopefully should come through on the 10th of July. Again, it will be a CPD session. We've got one coming up by our very own Bill. Again, sort of September timeframe will be around fire and risk assessments. And then later towards the end of the year, some practical skills and information around PFI handback, which will be held as a panel discussion, but with some very experienced people that are hopefully going to give me a lot of the answers that I need. As I say, we'll get to the AGM bit. This is only a couple of slides, so we will get to the training very quickly because I know that's the most important part and what the SIG is here for. So we'll move through to those. We did hold our vote this year. Unfortunately, Wayne, who was our chair, stepped down in February, and I was voluntold into the position quite happily and put myself into chair. Bill and Kova were re-elected into their existing positions. As I say, we do still have a couple of positions vacant. If anybody's interested, please reach out and I'll talk you through the process. I'm just going to pass over to Bill. Bill's going to talk about money.
Good afternoon, everybody. Not too much to tell you about on the money front, because obviously with the SIG recently picking up and starting to run a few events, there's not been a lot of activity. Some of you may have been to the event at Orange Box, so that's showing up in terms of sponsorship and a little bit of expenses on there as well that came out of that event. So at the moment we're running at a fairly low level in terms of the balance at 121.53. Always looking for additional sponsors if anybody's interested out there to run some of these interesting future events that we've got coming up. Thanks very much, Helen.
Thanks, Bill. And what I will say on sponsorship, it doesn't have to be money. It could be that your employer has a space. It could be that you would like to support with one of the events as a speaker. It's a subject you're passionate about, so please reach out to us. As Bill mentioned, we are trying to pick up speed as a SIG. We have been quite quiet over the years. Anybody that knows me knows that I'm probably not a quiet person. So I plan to change that for the SIG as well. Beth's laughing because she knows it's true. So we have held a couple of events, two with the Midlands region and one with Risings. We have supported on some other bits and pieces, but I think the big thing for us is what's next, and that is to get us out there and make people development a top subject for managers, leaders, for businesses and organizations. We are finding that companies are investing less now in development, and with all the changes in FM, with technology and being asked to do more, I think it's more important than ever that we actually try and encourage businesses to invest in people, and start trying to do our best to not only sort of cover those skill gaps, but to also make FM a career of choice. So that's what our aim is over the next 12 months. And hopefully when we come to the next AGM, I'll be able to say that we've taken good steps towards that goal. So on that note, we're to the any other business section. What I will say, and I probably should have said it at the beginning, if anybody has any questions, has anything that they want to raise, please drop it in the Q&A section. We will be keeping an eye on it throughout the event and answering all the questions towards the end. So in a bit of a weird way, if you do have any other business, just drop those Q&As into that section and we will pick it up towards the end when we get into the questions section. I don't want to dwell too long on this bit. I think it's really important that we move along and we let Beth get to the important part, which is teaching us all how to be slightly more organised, because I know it's something that I fail at quite often.
Thank you, Helen. I'm sure you're amazing at this. I'm really, really pleased to be here with everyone today. And let me start my timer so I don't go over. The reason I'm going to keep an eye on timing is because what I'm sharing with you today is an extract from a longer conference presentation that I regularly do, which is really popular. So this is maybe going to be 25, 30 minutes of what is more towards a 45-minute, 60-minute session. So I'm pulling out hopefully what is the really, really useful stuff. And it's called From Reactive to Productive, Managing Your Personal PPMs for Maximum Efficiency. I shall explain more about this in just a second. There'll be lots of people who I haven't met before on the call. I'm an ex-head of FM, 30 years working, managing buildings and teams, have moved for a number of years now, training. I'm a professional trainer. You can see some of the amazing clients that I regularly work with on the screen. I'm very, very lucky. And I train in 4 areas. So as an ex-FM, obviously facilities management skills. I'm a licensed health and safety trainer, licensed mental health first aid instructor, and also do a huge amount of professional development. So I'm pulling in all of that into this session, which I hope will be super, super useful. Fundamentally, what we are talking about is the fact that those of you on the call are probably brilliant at managing. As FMs, we're good at managing our buildings PPMs, at keeping things compliant, keeping things safe. You know, we have SLAs and KPIs that help us keep track of things. We have regular reviews and meetings to see what's going on. We look at our balanced scorecards. But if you think of me now as a trainer, I train about 1,500 people, sometimes more, sometimes a little bit less than that a year. So I speak to a lot of people. And the areas we're talking about today are areas that we're just not as good at managing. We're not as good at managing our own balanced scorecard. So if we were to do a review of our own balanced scorecard, I think we'd probably be more in the ambers and the reds, perhaps in the greens. So that's why what I'm going to share with you is 4 dead straightforward, easy steps to help improve ourselves in this area. And what I would love, I'm treating this like a mini training course. So what I would love is for you listening to have a pen and paper and scribble things as you go, because I'm going to get you to think about some things. I'm going to share with you at the end a QR code, and you can scan and get a copy of my handout, which is sort of summarizing the things. But I always say on training courses, if you hear something that resonates with you, make a note of it, because you'll forget it when you look at something in the future. So get your pen and paper ready, and I'll get you thinking. We're talking about maintenance. So if you think about maintaining your buildings, why do we maintain our buildings? Well, there's loads of reasons. Have a look at some of the stuff on the screen. Some of it is because we have to, you know, there's legal, statutory, mandatory requirements. There's perhaps warranty requirements or lease requirements. But some of it is because by maintaining our buildings and equipment, things look better, things work more efficiently. We avoid replacement, we avoid shutdown and failure. So if we kind of bring that to us just for a second and we think about why do we need to maintain ourselves, I would argue operationally for all of these reasons. You know, if I'm maintaining myself, I can work more efficiently. If I'm considering my own PPMs, I'm hopefully not going to deteriorate. I'm hopefully going to optimize my performance. You know, I'm hopefully going to keep on working efficiently. So this is an area that we all need to consider, and we've kind of got a choice. You know, if you think about the PPMs of your building, you can sit towards the red side, which is the kind of unplanned reactive maintenance, which we all do. Of course, it's part of what happens when you manage buildings. Things go wrong and you have to fix them and sort them out. But actually, if we understand the importance of the green side, which is where most of us sit with our PPMs, our planned preventative maintenance, what we're doing is we're able to schedule, we're able to budget, we're able to plan. And if we're thinking about managing ourselves, that's the choice we need to make. Which side of this do I want to be on? Because the time you spend on one of these sides genuinely can, I don't want to be dramatic, but it kind of changes your life and how you live your life. So we need to make a choice. And the 4 areas we're going to look at cover this. And we're going to start off by looking at the unplanned, the sort of reactive side of how we can manage our time. So if we are now considering ourselves and we're thinking about managing ourselves reactively, what we're doing is we're kind of leaving things perhaps till they're either broken or they're failing. And if you think about yourself and how you're managing yourself, that isn't necessarily a good place to be. We don't want to be leaving things till they're urgent. We don't want to be leaving things till there's a crisis. We know the impact it has on our buildings if things have to be fixed urgently and things come up urgently. We have to pause something else. It stops us being productive. We have to drop things and respond. So we need to try and move away from that ourselves. We need to move away from urgency. And you've seen this quote, you know, the Eisenhower quote. Have a quick read of that. I'll read it out loud in a second, but just read it to yourself for a sec. And then read it again. What is important is seldom urgent, and what is urgent is seldom important. I think as a kind of philosophy, if we can try and remember this, and I need to remind myself this of the times when I'm feeling super stressed out, you need to just kind of take a breath. What sits alongside this that you've probably seen on training courses in the past is the Eisenhower matrix. And there's all sorts of different versions of this, some of which I'm not that keen on, but I just want to use it as a prompt, a sort of visual prompt to kind of help get our heads around it, because there's 4 quadrants that the matrix builds. So the first quadrant is where we are making things urgent and important. So we're taking things that are important for sure, and we're making them urgent. So this is our kind of crisis mitigation, our reactive work. And this happens, you know, we have got things that need absolutely being done urgently for sure, but it's not a healthy place to live all the time. And if you're living constantly in urgency, you know, that kind of adrenalized state, we've all had it, where there's an urgent meeting or something, you're rushing to meet a deadline, that sort of, your heart's racing, you're getting that adrenalized feeling, that fight or flight response is kicking in. That is not a healthy place to live all the time. But a lot of us in our profession live here quite a lot of the time. So what I'm hoping you're doing as we're talking is reflecting. Right? So maybe around 5% of our time would be sat in this box, because sometimes it has to be, but this is not where we want to be living. We've then got the not important actions, tasks that we're doing that we make urgent. Think about that. You're in the middle of doing a piece of work and a notification pops up in the corner of your screen on Teams, or you're in the middle of doing something and an email comes in from somebody, or somebody phones, and you stop what you're doing and you respond to it. What you're doing when you do that is you're making that urgent, and it's not. So how do we stop doing that? Well, in a longer session, we could go into more detail, but certainly one of the things we can do is about turning notifications off, prioritizing, scheduling, which is some of the stuff we're going to talk about. But you need to recognize how much of your time are you making things urgent that aren't. We've then got this box, right? So some models Some models would say, go back to this one for a second, some of these versions of this model would say, delegate this stuff, delegate it. Well, you don't necessarily have anyone you could delegate to. So you've got to find a way of managing that. This box here, the kind of when you're doing stuff that isn't urgent or important, a lot of these models that talk about the Eisenhower matrix would say, delete it, get rid of it, stop doing it. Well, we're not robots. We need to do things sometimes that take our minds away. We need to do things that kind of calm us down and make ourselves feel better. But what we need to recognize is, what is it I'm doing? Am I procrastinating? Is that mindless scrolling of looking at cat videos? Or I was saying something the other day, my feed at the moment is lots of people falling over. I'm not quite sure what that's saying about me and what I'm looking at, right? But you've got to understand, where are you spending time? Where are you potentially wasting time? We'll talk about procrastination again in a moment. You've then got the things that aren't urgent, but you know what? They're really important, that we need to be planning, right? This is the box we want to be spending our time in. We've all heard of Pareto and the Pareto principle, where you want to be thinking about the kind of the 80-20 rule. Ideally, you want to be spending 80% of your time in this box, where you are looking forward. So at the beginning of a week, you're thinking, right, what's the next 2 weeks like? What can I plan for? What can I be considering to try and avoid things falling into this urgent box? We're about trying to stop things being urgent. Why are we trying to do this? Well, in a serious point, because actually, if you live in urgency, that feeling can build stress. And if you live in urgency continuously, stress, if it's chronic and if it's continuous, can lead to burnout. And this thing about burnout is kind of like a flat line. You know, we all experience stress, of course we do, and it kind of goes up and down. If you are heading towards burnout, or if you've got to that point, it's almost like your stress is flatlining. It's continuous, it's continuously high. So living in that box here, right, that's when we see ourselves leading to burnout. This report comes out every year from Mental Health UK, and in my handout, you'll get a copy of it. Really interesting. I mean, look at some of the stats. 91%, this one in the middle, 91% of adults report high or extreme levels of pressure or stress in the past year. That's incredibly high. People who are 18 to 24, 2 in 5 of them took time off over that last period because of high pressure caused by stress. And if you were to look at, say, the Health and Safety Executive website, the HSE website, on their statistics page, they talk about the moment, the latest numbers published are 964,000 of us working age adults are currently suffering from stress, anxiety, or depression. It's the highest it's ever been. So this thing about living in urgency, the only way we can stop living in urgency is by planning, which is why when we go back to our maintenance model, we want to be moving to the green. Living in the red builds stress. It's okay sometimes, but we want to be living in the green if we can. So if we look at our PPM and we break down our PPM and we consider condition-based maintenance, which you guys do on your buildings. So this sort of routine or continuous monitoring. A lot of what we do with our PPMs in our buildings is scheduled. And we'll talk about scheduled after, but we kind of think, right, we'll do that every month, every week, every quarter. Condition-based is different. It's where you're doing regular checks, and it's when you do the checks, you think, yeah, maybe we need to do something, but it hasn't failed, right? So it's looking at the levels, looking at how you're doing. So if we bring it back to us for a second, and we're trying to avoid burnout, and we're trying to stop ourselves living in urgency, one of the things we need to do is manage our stress. And anyone who's done any kind of mental health first aid training, one of the models that we talk about on that course is the stress container, developed by Mental Health First Aid England. Other organisations use things like the stress bucket or different analogies, but the stress container is the Mental Health First Aid England. And it's really straightforward. It recognises that life is pretty stressful. I mean, look at what's going on in the world at the moment. We've got wars and financial crises and all sorts of political things, let alone your friends, your family, your work, your health, your feelings, your worries, your guilt. It's all in there, right? Every day coming in. And the stress container model is about recognizing what are the things we're doing that will release some of that stress, open the tap and let it out. And what are some of the things we're doing that actually stop us releasing stress? I haven't got time today to go into the details of it, but it's a fantastic model that I'll share the link on my handout. The fascinating thing for us is you can't compare your stress to somebody else, because your stress container, I always use the analogy of a glass or a bottle or something. Your stress container might be really generous and you might manage it really well. But if you're a leader, let's say, or a manager, and you've got people in your team, they might have a shot glass size stress container. We've all got different thresholds. So if we're trying to avoid burnout, if we're doing our condition-based monitoring, part of the monitoring is going, where am I at? What are my levels like? What do I need to do proactively? And why this is so serious, why stress is so serious, and it really is something we should talk about, is because all of us have a slightly different reaction to it. We've all got a different stress signature. And if you think of the, say, 1,500 people I teach a year, and a lot of the courses I do, we talk about stress, we talk about mental health, amongst other things. What's fascinating with it is that your body, as it says there, figures out what's going on before your brain has kind of even comprehended it. So when you say, Beth, how are you? And I say, yeah, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. My body isn't. My body, I might have digestive problems. I might have breathing problems. I might have aches and pains. I might have brain fog. We're all different. And what's fascinating about this, and this is why we need to monitor our levels, what's fascinating is your stress signature could be emotional, it could be behavioral, it could be physiological, which is your body. Quite often, if you think about this, some of your stress signatures you've had for decades and decades. I know one of mine, for example, I got when I was a very busy FM managing a law firm in Mayfair, and I was 25. I've still got that same stress signature now, and I forget it. And then something happens and I'm like, oh, wow, yeah. So think about the signs, try and think back, try and notice them, and recognize you've got more than one. That waking up at 3 a.m, that's not just because you were uncomfortable, it's possibly because it's one of your stress signatures. So stress is really, really important to manage, and it can stop us getting to burnout. Now, I said I was going to talk about procrastination. I think this is actually really interesting, and more interesting perhaps than we initially think. So this thing about why, when I've got a deadline, when you've got something really important that you should be doing, you're choosing not to do it. And it's really frustrating. And you're thinking, why? I know I should be, but I can't help but. And it could be being distracted by your phone. It could be distracted by whatever it might be. One of the things that's quite interesting, and Mel Robbins, who many of you will have seen on podcasts or on YouTube, she has a small kind of 3-4 minute little snippet about this, which I'm going to share in my handout, where she talks about procrastination. And she talks about the fact that procrastination is a habit that you and I rely on. And what's even more interesting about it is that she says the habit is caused quite often by stress being the initial trigger. So this is about giving yourself a bit of a break. It's about recognizing that, when you find yourself scrolling, which many of us do, right? You've got to consider, why am I doing that? It's not because I'm fascinated by it. I mean, we know the algorithms are trained to engross us, but why am I doing it? Well, I'm doing it to avoid doing something else. And possibly the reason why is because I'm stressed out about something. So the cycle is interesting. It's recognizing that there's a cause for the behavior. The behavior then avoids me doing whatever it is I should be doing, which actually makes me feel better while I'm doing it. And because it's a cycle, it means we keep on doing it. So we've got to break the cycle, particularly if we're trying to stop ourselves getting to the urgency box that we're trying to avoid. And what she says in the video, and you'll get to see it, she says, first thing is, number one, just acknowledge it. Okay, don't give yourself a hard time. The reason I'm doing this, the reason I've just watched 14 cat videos, one after another, is, do you know what? It's because I'm stressed. To then consider, why am I stressed? Just so you recognize it and you kind of own it for a minute. What's really fascinating, though, is the last two things. If you then do the thing you've been avoiding, don't commit to doing the whole thing, but commit to doing 5 minutes of the thing you've been avoiding. The proof is that 80% of us then continue and get on with it, the report we were due to write, or the action we were trying to avoid. So recognize the stress, do what it is you've been avoiding, just for 5 minutes, and then see if it allows you to continue. But watch the video. She's far better at explaining it than me. So we've looked at reactive maintenance. we've looked at condition-based maintenance. If we're moving into the green, what we need to be doing is using condition-based maintenance to kind of measure how we are in terms of our stress container. But then if we really want to stay in the green and we want to stay away from urgency, we need to schedule. And this whole thing around scheduling, you've seen the kind of failing to plan is planning to fail mentioned loads and loads of times. With maintenance, it's we do it every month, or we do it every quarter, or we do it to this level or to that standard or mileage if it's a car, for example. We need to consider our own lives and think, where can I schedule some things? And I don't mean become a control freak, but I mean recognize where your opportunities are. So I'm going to give you a few things here and scribble some of these down as they resonate and consider which of these you could try. Okay. First thing, if I had a longer session, I'd talk more about vision and the importance of knowing where it is you want to go, where you're heading, the direction you're going in. If you don't have a vision, you're all over the place, and that's for work and for life, right? So vision is super important, but let's do a mini version of that here, which is outcome. If you consciously, and this is every day, different times of the day, different opportunities, if you consider on what do I want my outcome to be, it gets your brain trained to achieving what it is you want. For example, right, today, this session, my outcome for this session is to cover some key things, to give you information that's going to support you and give you some more confidence and make your lives a bit easier. That's my outcome, right? To not be boring while I'm doing it, hopefully, and to not run massively over time. That's my outcome. But if I was having a meeting, if you're having a meeting with a manager, for example, what do you want your outcome to be for that meeting? Whether you're the manager or the colleague in that session, what do you want to achieve? If I'm having a meeting with my manager, I maybe want them to know what I've been working on, and that I come across passionately, that they can see that I really want success to be tangible, for example. But it could be, and I'll give you a personal example. I've got an elderly aunt who's like a Mary Berry. She's amazing at cooking. And one summer, she was coming over for lunch, and I got in my head about, oh my God, what shall I make? And almost forgot that I could even cook, got into such a state. And then I thought, actually, what's my outcome? What do I want my outcome to be for the day that she's coming to visit? And I don't want my outcome to be that I'm stressed and anxious and I'm in the kitchen making food. I want my outcome to be with her, to spend quality time with her. And it took all the pressure away when I realized what was important. So I have on my iPad, for example, my screensaver is what is my outcome? It constantly reminds me this evening, for today, for that meeting, for tomorrow. It's a really, really tangible way of having active visions, little micro visions that you can head towards. Really, really important. However, vision is amazing, and knowing where you want to go. And I'm a believer in things like vision boards and all sorts of things. But a vision without strategy is kind of hoping. When you combine your vision, maybe your outcome or your bigger vision, with strategy steps, you gather momentum. So if you think about vision being the what it is I want to achieve, and the strategy being how the hell am I going to get there, together, those two things create your plan. And they're really, really powerful. And if you're anything like me, if we're looking at longer term vision, you want to break it down. You want to chunk it down. You hear people talking about chunking it down, but you want to chunk it down into kind of long term, medium term, short term. And I always use the analogy on training courses. You imagine I was training to run a marathon, and next year I want to run the London Marathon. By the way, I don't, but let's say it was one of my visions. I now would probably struggle running a 5K. So actually, if my long-term vision is run 26.2 miles, whatever it is, my short-term strategy to get there is to do a couch to 5K. And then maybe I do a couch to 12K. And then maybe my medium term is to do a half marathon. And then, do you see what I mean? And having the chunks gives you momentum, gives you wins. And one of the reasons we stop doing things, we fail at things, we lose momentum, is because we don't have micro wins, which we need to have along the way. I could go into more detail, but I only have a short period of time with you. So think about outcome is your little micro visions, but you've then got to have a plan as to how you're going to get there, whether it's something big or something small. The other thing, which you will have come across, I'm sure, is about planning your priorities. This thing about time runs out. Each day has a limit of time. Each week has a limit of time. Each month has a limit of time. Our lives have a limit of time. So we have to prioritize. And you've probably read or heard of or seen quoted or on social media or YouTube things around Stephen Covey's books, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. This is just such a simple but such a powerful analogy. And it's about recognizing that we don't schedule our time effectively. And what happens is we go through life missing out the important things. And we've got to stop and think about it. So, for example, if you don't prioritize your time and you don't schedule in the things that are important to you, there is a real risk that you're going to fill it with other stuff, that might be key, but it's not absolutely your big rocks. And it means that, for example, and I'll be honest, I was guilty doing this, and I think FM is one of those careers where it's very easy to fill your time with maybe 1 or 2 big rocks, which can be what's going on in your building, what's going on in your company, in terms of the organization you work for, and some of the other stuff that's also really important falls by the wayside. For example, I didn't used to prioritize my health, and I filled it with my work. And what it means is when it then comes to fitting in other things, I haven't got time to go to the gym. No, I've got to work late again. I haven't got time to do this. So what we've got to do is we've got to recognize what our big rocks are. And once we're clear on our big rocks, which I'm not saying it can't be work, but it has to be other stuff. We need to schedule that in to our days, to our weeks. We need to plan for when we want to have it. And then the other stuff can fill around it. But you need to be clear first on what your big rocks are. So I'm going to pause for a moment and just give you a chance to think about it. If I was to put you on the spot and get you to write down your big 3, what are the big 3 things that you must prioritize in your day, in your week, in your month? And then recognize as you think about them, have they been your priority? Have you been putting them in the jar first? Doesn't mean you have to do them first in the day, but it means you have to plan them because the time will fill around them if you don't. Really, really important. Oh, we could spend longer. The other thing, though, I want to talk about is this. I absolutely find this fascinating. So if you've not done stuff on this before, hopefully this will be useful, and I'll again share another video with you. We all have different times of the day when we perform better, right? We're all completely different. We talk about chronotypes. We're all different chronotypes, right? So we all have a peak in our day. Doesn't mean it's in the early morning. Yours might be at a different time, but we have a peak in our day where we are laser focused. All of us have this peak in a day. For some of us, it's a couple of hours. For some of us, it's a shorter period for that. All of us also have a trough, where actually we're not firing as sharply as we could, and we're a bit tired, and it's probably the time when we should be doing maybe kind of lower risk, less intense things. But we also then have a time in the day where we generally kind of come up again, maybe not to that level of vigilance we had in our peak, but in the recovery period, we often see our brain firing differently. So it's a time when we're more creative, we get ideas, we can do brainstorming. And what you and I need to do is understand for us, what time of the day does that hit? Now, you might not have a huge amount of flexibility in your diary and your time management to be able to go, no, I'm not doing that now because I'm in my trough, right? I mean, I'm lucky, I work for myself, so I can. And I know that my peak is kind of 6:30 in the morning till about 10. So I'm firing with ideas and sharpness, and my brain is really laser focused. But my trough can go from maybe about 10:30 to 2 sometimes. Now, if I'm running a training course, obviously I'm adrenalized often, so I'm staying at my peak, but I do notice the difference. I've got to work harder and I'm more likely to make mistakes. So I need to be mindful of that. But my creative side isn't in the middle of the day. My creative side is sometimes after I've had my evening meal, and I can from like 8 p.m. till 10 p.m. And I'm not suggesting you go and work at those sorts of hours of the day, but for me, wow, I sit with a blank piece of paper and just let my ideas come. So think about your day. Think about the work you're doing. Think about when you're scheduling meetings. Think about when you're doing some of your more routine work, and try and work out your peak, your trough, and your recovery, and you will see a difference. Makes a massive, massive difference. My last thing, again, I'm doing this quickly, is this thing about continuous monitoring. A bit like your PPMs. You know, we've talked about your reactive sit in the red. We talked about moving to the green, condition-based and scheduled. We've got to continuously monitor ourselves to kind of keep okay. And planning is great, but you've still got to dip in and do kind of like a pulse check. You've got to check your alignment. If you think of our tire here with kind of bald spots around it, where we aren't aligned, it's going to impact everything. The reason why we come first is because if you're not aligned, if you're not well, you can't work well, you can't support your family. So we've got to prioritize this. And there's two things I want to share with you. Just again, we're doing a really brief session, but two things I want to share with you. And these will be in my handout, but feel free to do screenshots because they're brilliant. I haven't created these, by the way. I found them on the internet, but they're great. One of the ways of kind of checking your alignment or checking in with yourself is by asking yourself questions. And I kind of question how many of us do this and how regularly we do this. So look at these 9 statements. Just read across them by yourselves. Read across the top line. Read across the middle line. Read across the bottom line. And then read them again and see if there is one that kind of resonates with you or two that resonate with you that either you have a reaction to or you think, God, I've never even thought about that. Read them again. And if you're having that reaction, write it down. Write that one down. Write 2 of them down if necessary. I find when I do this on training courses, a lot of people go down to the 2 ones, bottom left, middle left. What can I forgive myself for? What can I let go of that is affecting my well-being? It's amazing how many people come up with those. The middle one, what am I grateful for? There is science behind gratitude. If you are feeling grateful, apparently, I'm not an expert on this, you can't feel fear or anxiety. Lots of people keep things like gratitude journals. There was a woman the other day talking about the fact that she keeps a gratitude log. She said if she keeps a gratitude journal at the end of the day, when she's trying to write things down, she's kind of clutching and she says the same things every day. She said she moved into keeping a gratitude log. And what that does is every day, as she experiences things, could be that she got into the coffee shop first and managed to not have a huge queue in front of her. It could be the traffic lights were green as she was driving into work, whatever it might be. Could be the guy smiled as she was crossing the road, which brightened her day. She writes them down. And she said even after a month of doing it, what it's done is it's trained her brain to look for the positive. And that, I think, is an incredibly powerful thing. So we need to check in with ourselves, check in our alignment. The other thing, and pretty much the last thing I'm going to do with you, is recognize that in order for us to keep moving forward, in order for us to keep moving forward efficiently and effectively and healthily, you think about PPMs, we need to consider self-care. And self-care, some people talk about, light a candle, have a bath. Self-care isn't that. Self-care, if you look at the World Health Organization's definition of self-care, it's about things that we can do for ourselves that keep us healthy and not needing external kind of medical intervention. And what I find fascinating about self-care is that some people say, he does yoga 3 times a week and eats quinoa and, gets 8 hours sleep. Well, they might be amazing at the physical self-care, right? But if you think of these 8 areas of self-care, like the spokes on a tire, going back to our bald spots, if one of these areas is neglected, we are not going to be moving forward efficiently. We've got to be giving time and consideration to each of these. So the person who's doing yoga and eating quinoa and having 8 hours sleep a night might be terrible with their financial management, might be really awful in terms of the time management at work and working too late or not having a lunch break ever or not getting any fresh air. Okay, so it's balance. And that's why this thing about our continuous monitoring our continuous monitoring is really important. Think about the time you spend with your building, put some of that onto yourself. So very quick overview, but the whole thing around managing your personal PPMs for maximum efficiency is about trying to stay in the green. If you found that useful, if you found that interesting, and you would like a copy of the brief handout, scan the QR code, and you'll be sent that later on today. Equally, I'm never as good as we should be on LinkedIn, but I do share some bits and pieces on LinkedIn. So if we're not connected on LinkedIn, please feel free to do that as well. That's me done, Helen. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Ben. That's great. I was scribbling down as you wrote.
Good.
I did my job. No, we really appreciate it.
My
Like I say,
pleasure.
hopefully people have found that informative. Just as a reminder, we have a couple of slides that we're just quickly going to go through, but if you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A function, and we will come to those shortly. And that could be about the PD, about the SIG, could be about the training Beth's just gone through. Go ahead and submit them through, and we will get to as many as we can. I have a couple written down that I will kick off with if nobody else beats me to it. But yeah, so just moving on, just a reminder, if you're not yet a member with IWFM, it does come with some benefits that are sort of outlined below. Feel free to scan the QR code, which will take you through to the assessment. Likewise, if you've got any sort of questions about being a member, again, feel free to reach out. Again, if you're an IWFM member, you have access to the mentorship service that they offer, and that is either somebody that's maybe new or somebody that wants to develop themselves and they're looking to be mentored by someone. But also, if you've got, if you're feeling a bit ragged, you've run the gauntlet for a few years at FM, it's highly likely that you've got some really great insights that you can share with people that are just coming into the business. So you can also volunteer to be a mentor as well. So again, if you're interested in either of those, or perhaps a little bit of both, you can go onto the IWFM website for some more details. And one of the last few slides that we've got for you is just a reminder that IWFM Live is coming up in June, based in London. Again, it's another full day. I don't know whether to sort of describe it as an event similar to the workplace. It's basically like a conference with lots of information and key sort of speakers within our industry coming forward. So if you haven't registered for that, feel free to scan the QR code. It is free for members, but the spaces are limited. So if you haven't already, scan through and try and get yourself booked on that, because it should be a good day. And now the bit for which people have been waiting for, it's your CPD number. So if you want to log this on IWFM, if you scan the QR code, go through, you can log yourself into the event, and the code that you need is just there on the left-hand side. And that, I believe, is our last one for the day, slide-wise. So I haven't seen any questions submitted yet, so please, if people do have some, go ahead and put them through. I will sort of kick it off and ask my question, because I can do, because I'm selfish that way. It's obviously for Beth and not for myself, because that would just be really weird. So as a sort of manager and leader, after sort of watching that presentation, how can I use PPMs to help with sort of, preventing mental health burnout, not just for myself, but for people in the team as well? Because it's not as simple as me just going, hey, I went to this really good webinar, you should do this. Because without context, it doesn't help. So is there something practical I can do?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're heading towards Mental Health Awareness Week. I think the tools around stress, the understanding around stress are pretty well published now. Something like the stress container. I always say when I do mental health first aid or mental health training, the tool that you learn, share with other people. Right. So the stress container tool, if I was leading a team currently, I would use that tool as a team discussion prompt. I would explain how it works. When we teach the stress container on the course, we get people to kind of dump down what's in their stress container, the things that have just appeared, the things that have been there for a while, the thoughts, the feelings, the work stuff, the home stuff. We do it as a very private exercise, but we get people to recognize what is going on for them. Because what you write down today you would write down different things next week. There's things that lurk at the bottom of your stress container that stay there for months and years, but there's lots of things that that keep on coming up. So I would get my team to also consider their stress container. And do you know what, Helen, the other thing I would do is, if you and I were working together, I would get you, if you were comfortable, to share with me your stress signature. Because when I see you doing whatever it is you're doing, which is one of your stress signatures that you may not even realize you're doing, I can check in and ask how you are. And I can say, you know, we often talk about asking twice. I can say, how are you? And you're like, yeah, I'm fine. And I'm like, well, I've just noticed you've been scratching your hand, or whatever it is that you said to me is your stress signature. Is everything okay? And, you know, I do a lot of training around listening and listening skills, and listening in a way that allows people to think, I genuinely mean it when I'm asking that question, and give you the time to answer, means you might then have a conversation with me that neither you nor I were expecting, that could be really supportive. And the stress container could be a starter for that. So it's really, really powerful. It's a really good tool.
Cool. Thank you very much. And then another one that we've got is sort of like, you know, I think we get into, it's quite easy to try and build new habits. Likewise, it's also very easy to fall back out of them. So how do you sort of help yourself recognize when you're falling back into that urgent and important for everything?
Again, I think it's self-awareness, isn't it? And I think if you feel that adrenalized state more often than not, and we all know what it feels like when you're kind of having that slightly panicked feeling, it's recognizing that's not healthy and wanting to proactively do something about it. But I think procrastination, honestly, is one of the most powerful things. I've got on my phone, I've got into the habit of using things like the Pomodoro technique, using the timer on Microsoft to chunk down my day, to recognize that even if it's something I really don't want to do, invoicing as an example, if I set my timer and think I'll do it for half an hour, that's bearable. You can do anything for, you know, a short period of time. So I turn off notifications while I'm doing it, and I think the rest of us need to be better at that. But I have an app on my phone called Be Present. Don't know if anyone else has tried it. And it actually, you set what you want to lock down, and it doesn't let you open during core hours, maybe Instagram or Facebook or whatever it is your procrastination preference, doesn't let you open it. And even outside of those core hours, when you open it, it only opens it for 5 minutes and then it shuts it down. It's made a big difference, I have to say. And I know I do it far more when I'm feeling a bit overwhelmed or stressed. So it's kind of recognizing that feeling in ourselves, but and not giving yourself a hard time because you're feeling like that, probably, you know, for a valid reason.
I haven't heard of it, but I could probably do with it, because I do find myself slipping into those.
Yeah, we all do.
Those moments of 5 minutes away, I'm going to just look away from this email, or worse yet, you're in a meeting and I start opening an email instead of concentrating on what I should be looking at.
We all do it.
My boss isn't on the call to hear that.
We all do it.
Yeah. So one of the things for me personally is that I don't always recognize that I'm stressed. I wouldn't even be able to tell you what the outward signs are. Because I mean, I have some sort of medical issues that can be exacerbated by stress as well. So, but you don't know that it's that or something I've eaten or you know. So, I mean, are there certain sort of like questions or something people can use, not just for themselves, but again, maybe for their colleagues, as you say, to sit there and sort of like help point them to and say, actually, you know,
no, I think it's a brilliant question. Yeah. And I think one of the things we always talk about when we're doing the stress container exercise is when people say, do you know, I don't know what my stress signature is, the easiest way to find out is to ask somebody who knows you. So if you said to my husband, what does Beth do when she's stressed? Because she's not sure, he would go, are you joking? And he'd give you a list. But if he then said to my work colleagues, what does Beth do when she's stressed? They would say something else, right? And often the signatures are the same. If I don't know somebody, I might ask them questions to try and understand. If I know somebody, do you know, one of the big things I'm looking for, and we'll link to health and safety, you know, when people talk about when do we need to review our risk assessments, when something significant has changed or when there's been a change, stress is the same. I'm listening out for a conversation with you when you say, yeah, do you know, I normally sleep through the night and I just keep on, I don't know, it's weird. I just keep on waking up at 3 a.m. That for me is a change. or if your appetite suddenly changes, or your work pattern changes, or your behavior at work changes, anytime there is a change, that is potentially a sign. And I think the point you said about, whether it's our physical health or our mental health, stress makes things worse. So if you've got somebody who's already living with a poor mental health or a mental health diagnosis, stress will exacerbate their symptoms. Equally, if we've got physical symptoms, stress will make those worse if we've got physical health conditions. So it's dangerous, which is why we need tools. We need open conversation. The HSC on their website, they've got all sorts of support around stress. They emphasize the fact that we need to be putting it on our risk assessments as a hazard in the workplace. We should have been doing that for years anyway. So I just think it's the more open we can be, the better. And I think what's difficult sometimes as a leader is you want to show a connection with your teams, and you want to show some vulnerability, but you feel if you show too much, people are gonna be anxious about you. You know what I mean? So there's a balance. But I think having some sort of open discussion is really important, really, really important. And tools can facilitate that conversation.
Cool, thank you very much. We've got a question come through. How can I ensure that my own wellbeing practices strengthen my ability to lead calmly and make sound decisions under operational pressure?
Well, I think the answer is complex, but I think what you've got to do is find out what does work for you. Because, for some, if you say to people, what are some of the things that open up your stress container and make you feel better or calm you down? Fundamentally, self-care is about what helps you relax, what helps you calm down, what helps you recover. And for every single one of us, that's different. Somebody might say, I go for a 10-mile run. Somebody else might say, I can't think of anything worse, but I love fresh air. So I open a window and let the fresh air hit my face and I feel better. Some people want to talk to other people, and they feel better when they just sort of vent. Other people shut themselves away. All of these things are okay as long as it's within the context of keeping ourselves healthy. For me, for example, when I do a long training course, I will sometimes literally lie down when I finish because I'm so exhausted and I don't want to talk to anyone. And if I do that for half an hour, that's fine. But if I do that for the next 4 days, that's not very healthy. Does that make sense? So we're all about balance, aren't we? But what you and I have got to find is what works for us. For me, I'll just share with you, I know when I'm stressed, I want to reorganize a cupboard. There you go. Throw that out there. For some people, it's craft. For some people, it's exercise. For some people, But the thing with the stress container, go back to that for a second. There are things we do that help. There are things we do that we think are helping that ultimately aren't. Alcohol is an example of one. No judgment here, but one glass of wine might calm you down. When you have the bottle, actually it's a depressant, so it might make you feel worse. So it's a bit of self-reflection, understanding what does work for you. But the tools in the handout, the videos, all of that stuff there will give people time after today when they've got a bit of time to reflect. It'll be super useful.
Okay, we've got another one. And I'm showing my ignorance now because I have no idea what this first bit means. As an AUDHD leader who experiences RSD,
there's too many acronyms in this sentence already.
How can I balance empathy and accountability whilst ensuring that my desire to support others and please others doesn't lead me to overcommit or compromise my own well-being?
I think that's a really sound question. I think empathy is one of the most important skills in communication, but one of the hardest things. And can I recommend to everybody to go onto YouTube? Not now, obviously, in a minute, to go onto YouTube to watch 2 videos. I think I've got them on my YouTube channel, actually, but one of them is the Brené Brown, Empathy versus Sympathy, 3 minutes, and it will help you understand the difference, because empathy is about connection, which is why if you feel you empathize too much, you can sometimes feel that it draws too much from you. And the other one is, it's not about the nail, 1.5 minutes. If you're in any kind of relationship with anyone else, oh my God, it's a game changer, that video. It's not about the nail. Empathy is critical, and it's a critical part of communication and listening, because listening is a skill that we don't get taught, but we have to learn. The thing about listening, when you react with empathy, I think a lot of us feel that we've got to have answers when we're having a difficult conversation with somebody. We've got to fix them. We've got to find solutions. You haven't. Listening, give you an analogy. If you think of a really twisty, turny river, what you're doing when you listen to somebody well is you are letting the flow of the river go in the direction it wants to go without you controlling it. And what you're doing is you're asking questions and reacting with empathy, and asking questions and reacting with empathy, and following the flow of the river. I think what a lot of us do is either as partners or parents or as leaders, we try and solve and fix other people's problems, but people don't want us to. It doesn't help. I say to my husband sometimes when he's had a bad day at work and he's having a vent, and I'll say, do you want me to come up with ideas, or do you just want me to listen? And he says, just listen. Trying to solve other people's problems, people don't generally appreciate. So follow the flow of the river, use your listening skills to do that. Empathy helps you, builds that connection, but you don't want to then try and control that dialogue.
Yeah, I know I've been guilty of that one.
Well, and let me make one more point. The thing about listening, which is why we all need training in listening, the thing about listening is, as FMs, we fix and we solve, and that's what makes us amazing at what we do, right? But it makes us not very, I was going to say a rude word, it makes us not very good listeners, because when you're listening to people, fixing and solving isn't what you should be doing. So I've had to unlearn the skills I learned to be a good FM. Tricky. I feel your pain, everyone. I do.
Well, that's answer the questions that were in the Q&A. We're obviously down to the last couple of minutes. So I just want to say thank you, Beth, for the
My
session
pleasure.
that you've provided. There will be a short survey that goes out to anybody that attended today, just for some feedback. If you could fill it in, it helps us to sort of direct where we put, future resource in the type of events that we give, what you would like to see. We really do need the input to the SIG to help us make sure that we're giving you value for your time, because we're very aware as FMs that you don't have a lot to spare. You may have a bit more now, thanks to Beth's training today. But it's important that you do sort of maximise when you take an hour out of your day to get some benefit from us. So if you can help us with that, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you everyone for attending. Hopefully we will be putting on more, and we will see you at some in the future. So thank you very much, everybody, and enjoy the rest of the day.